The grand chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the alarms blared. The room, normally filled with the soft murmurs of 300 different species discussing trade routes and border disputes, now echoed only with the sharp wail of security systems. Council leader Tai Ho rose from his ornate chair, his forearms gripping the edge of the polished stone table, his pale blue skin flushed purple with concern, as he looked up at the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. "What is happening?" he demanded, voice cutting through the alarm. The chief of security, a tall, thin being named Ki-Hyun, rushed to his side. "An unregistered ship has entered Nexus space, sir. It bypassed all our outer defenses without triggering a single alert until it was already in our atmosphere." Gasps rippled through the assembly. Such a thing was impossible. The defense network around Nexus had stood unbreached for 12,000 years. "Show me," Taeho ordered. The hologram shifted to display a small vessel, unlike anything the Council had seen before. It was bulky and inelegant, with odd protrusions and what appeared to be crude weaponry. Nothing like the sleek, efficient designs preferred by Council races. "They're requesting docking permission," Ki-Hyun said, his voice tight with disbelief. Taeho's eyes narrowed. "Denied. Order them to retreat immediately." "Sir?" Ki-Hyun hesitated. "They've already docked. At Terminal 7. The Council erupted in chaos. Terminal 7 was less than a kilometer from the Council chambers. Whatever this invasion force was, they were already here. "Seal the chamber. Alert all security forces," shouted a representative from the warrior Dralax Federation. But before anyone could move, the massive doors to the chamber slid open. Standing there, flanked by stunned and clearly confused Council guards, was a group of bipedal beings. They walked upright on two legs, with two arms and a single head. Their skin tones ranged from light beige to deep brown, and they were covered in colorful fabric garments rather than the protective suits worn by most spacefaring races. "Hello," said the one at the front, a female with short black hair and keen eyes. "I am Captain Jiwoo of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. We come in peace and request formal admission to your council." The chamber went completely silent. Even the alarms had been shut off, leaving only the soft sound of the ventilation system and the steady breathing of the Earth creatures. Tae-ho stared at them, his four hands trembling slightly. "How is this possible?" he finally said. "Your system was quarantined. The barrier was designed to be undetectable and impenetrable." Captain Jiwoo smiled. Not a threatening baring of teeth as some species might interpret it, but a genuine expression of friendly amusement. "Yes, we found that barrier about 80 years ago. Interesting technology. We studied it, figured out how it worked, and then built a device to slip through it. Took us a while, I'll admit." Another human stepped forward, holding what appeared to be a data device. "I'm Science Officer Doyen. We've brought complete records of our civilization and technological development as a gesture of good faith." One of the Council guards moved forward nervously, accepting the device and quickly backing away as if the human might bite. "This is impossible," whispered a reptilian Council member to Taeho's right. "Their world was classified as a death trap. No intelligent life was supposed to evolve past basic survival there." Captain Jiwoo's hearing was apparently better than they'd assumed. "Death trap? Earth? I mean, sure, we have some rough spots, but it's home." Taeho finally found his voice. "Your planet experiences extreme temperature variations, crushing gravity by galactic standards, toxic atmospheric components, aggressive fauna, and frequent natural disasters. How did you not only survive but develop spaceflight?" The humans exchanged glances, and a third member of their party, a broad-shouldered male with a beard, let out a short laugh. "That's just Tuesday for us," he said. "I don't understand." "Taeho," replied Captain Jiwoo, stepped forward. "What my colleague Sunwoo means is that humans are adaptable. We evolved dealing with challenges. They made us stronger, more creative, more determined." The Council chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. These creatures from a world the Council had written off as too hostile for advanced life hadn't just survived. They had thrived, developed technology advanced enough to detect and bypass barriers created by the most sophisticated races in the galaxy, and found their way to Nexus. "How did you even find us?" asked Ki-hyun, breaking protocol to speak directly to the aliens. Captain Ji-woo smiled again. "We found one of your probes. It crashed in an ocean on our planet about a century ago. We reverse-engineered it, improved upon the design, and followed its navigation records here." Improved upon? Taeho couldn't finish the sentence. The idea that primitives could improve Council technology was unthinkable. "Would you like to see our ship?" Ji-woo asked as casually as if offering to show guests around her home. "We've made some interesting modifications to the basic warp drive design." Taeho looked around at the stunned faces of the Council. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council, masters of 1,000 worlds, had been rendered completely speechless, and the humans just stood there, smiling, waiting to be invited in. The emergency session of the Galactic Council stretched into its 4th hour. The Grand Chamber, usually a place of order and protocol, now buzzed with anxious whispers as council members huddled in small groups, occasionally throwing glances at the human delegation seated at the center of the room. Scientist Minho stepped up to the presentation platform, his slender fingers adjusting the holographic controls. The elderly Veloxian's skin shimmered with stress patterns, visible proof of his agitation. "Esteemed council members," he began, his translator converting his high-pitched tones into standard galactic common, "I have been asked to present our historical data on planet Earth." The massive screen behind him lit up with an image of a blue-green planet partially covered in white clouds. Approximately 2,300 standard cycles ago, Earth was classified as a Category 9 death world. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Death worlds were planets considered too hostile for intelligent life to develop beyond primitive stages. This classification was not made lightly. Minho continued. Earth possesses extreme temperature variations that can shift by nearly 100 degrees in some regions. Its gravity is 1.3 times our galactic average. Its atmosphere contains oxygen, a highly reactive and corrosive element. Captain Ji-woo, seated beside Ambassador Doyen, leaned over to her colleague. "Are they serious? Oxygen is corrosive?" Doyen shrugged. "Maybe to them," Minho continued, seemingly unaware of their exchange. "The planet experiences frequent tectonic activity, resulting in earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Approximately 70% of its surface is covered in water, a substance that most council species find toxic in its raw form." He tapped. The controls and the display showed images of Earth's natural disasters: hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and wildfires. Additionally, the planet is home to over 10 million species of flora and fauna, many of which are aggressive predators or contain deadly toxins. The images shifted to show lions hunting, venomous snakes, poisonous plants, and microscopic views of bacteria and viruses. Based on these factors, our forecasting models gave any potentially intelligent species on Earth less than a 0.01% chance of developing beyond stone tools, let alone achieving spaceflight. Council leader Tae-ho gestured toward the human delegation. Yet here they are. Ambassador Doyen stood, her simple blue uniform standing out among the elaborate robes and exoskeletons of the council members. "With respect, Scientist Minho, I think you've misunderstood something fundamental about humans," she said, her voice calm but firm. "What you see as obstacles, we see as challenges. What you call harsh conditions, we call Tuesday." She nodded to one of her team, who sent their own data to the holographic display. The screen filled with images of human achievements: ancient pyramids, the Great Wall, medieval cathedrals, modern skyscrapers, underwater habitats, and orbital stations. Every hardship Earth threw at us made us more creative, more determined, more adaptable. Doyen continued. When floods threatened our homes, we built dams. When disease struck, we developed medicine. When resources grew scarce in one area, we found ways to create more efficient technologies. The council chamber had grown silent, all eyes fixed on the human or the display showing the rapid progression of human technology. But how did you achieve spaceflight? Asked a council member from the back. The technological leap is too great. Doyen looked to Captain Jiwoo, who stood and took her place. About 100 years ago, something crashed into our Pacific Ocean, Jiwoo explained. We recovered it and discovered it was not of Earth origin. She nodded, and the display changed to show images of a damaged probe bearing council markings. It
was one of yours. A long-range observation probe, we think.
Most of its systems were damaged beyond repair, but we were able to extract some data and study its propulsion technology. The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Impossible, shouted one member. Our technology is coded to self-destruct, if tampered with. Yes, we found that feature, Jiwoo said with a small smile. After the first probe exploded, we were more careful with the second one. Second one? Taeho's voice was barely above a whisper. You've been watching us for quite some time, Jiwoo said. We found records of at least 7 observation probes in the recovered data. We've only found 2 so far. She tapped her wrist device, and the display changed to show technical schematics, comparing the council probe's propulsion system to the human adaptation. Your design was elegant but inefficient. We made some improvements. Her tone was matter-of-fact, not boastful. The council chamber fell silent again, this time with a heavy tension that seemed to press down on everyone present. Finally, a council member rose from her seat. She was smaller than most, with delicate features and gray-green skin. This was Sumi, representative of the Talon Alliance, known for their diplomatic rather than technological contributions to the council. I believe we are approaching this all wrong, Sumi said, her voice gentle but carrying to every corner of the chamber. Instead of seeing these humans as a threat or an impossibility, perhaps we should welcome them. Their unique perspective and obvious ingenuity could benefit us all. Her words triggered an immediate outcry from the opposite side of the chamber, where the imposing figure of Beck, representative of the militaristic Draconian Empire, rose to his full height. Absolutely not, Beck's voice boomed. These creatures have already proven they can bypass our security measures and improve upon our technology without permission. The quarantine barrier must be reinstated immediately, with triple the security. And these specimens should be detained for further study. Ambassador Doyen stepped forward, standing tall despite being dwarfed by many council members. We came here in peace, she said firmly. We sought you out because we believe in cooperation, not isolation. We could have continued developing on our own, building our fleet, expanding through our solar system. Instead, we chose to make contact. She looked around the chamber, meeting the many eyes, eye stalks, and sensory organs of the council members. That choice should tell you everything you need to know about humanity. The chamber fell quiet once more, but this time the silence held a different quality, one of contemplation rather than shock. Taeho looked from Sumi to Bayek, then back to the humans standing calmly at the center of the greatest political crisis the council had faced in millennia. This session will recess for 1 standard cycle, he finally announced. We need time to process this information. As the council members filed out, many still throwing glances at the humans, Doyun turned to Jiwoo. Well, she said quietly. That went about as expected. Jiwoo nodded. Phase 1 complete, now we wait. What neither of them said aloud was that back on Earth, humanity wasn't waiting at all. They both knew that even now, more ships were being prepared, more technology developed, more plans set in motion. After all, adaptation wasn't just what humans did, it was who they were. Chaos erupted in the Galactic Council chamber as representatives shouted over one another. The elegant hall, with its soaring crystal ceiling and hovering translation orbs, had never witnessed such disorder in its 1,000-year history. Order! I demand order! Council Leader Taeho's voice boomed through the amplification system, finally cutting through the noise. His forearms raised in a traditional gesture of authority, the blue veins on his neck pulsing with exertion. As the chamber quieted, military advisor Hyun stepped forward. The veteran warrior stood rigid, her scaled skin reflecting the chamber's blue light as she activated the central hologram. 17, she said simply. 17 Council worlds report human diplomatic teams arriving simultaneously within the last standard cycle. The hologram displayed a map of Council space, with 17 planets highlighted in pulsing red. "That's impossible," whispered a delegate from the front row. "Even with our fastest ships, coordinating arrivals with such precision across such distances would take months of planning." "The humans are not using our transportation technology," Hyun continued, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "Initial reports suggest they have developed some form of instantaneous transportation. They simply appear." Fresh murmurs rippled through the assembly. Instantaneous transportation had been theorized but never achieved by Council scientists. The energy requirements alone were thought to be insurmountable. "There's more," Hyun said, tapping her control pad. The hologram shifted to show a barren, rocky world with a toxic yellow-green atmosphere. "This is Chorus 9, a mining world abandoned 3 centuries ago when its resources were depleted and its atmosphere became too toxic for habitation." She tapped again, and the image changed. The same planet appeared, but now with sprawling structures visible on its surface and visible changes to its atmosphere, patches of blue breaking through the sickly yellow. This image was taken 6 standard days ago. Humans have established a colony there. They're terraforming it. The chamber erupted again, but this time in disbelief rather than anger. "Terraforming Chorus 9 would take decades with our best technology," one scientist objected. "For us, yes," Hyun agreed, "but not for them." The doors to the chamber slid open, and Representative Junho of Earth entered. Unlike the formal attire of the council members, he wore simple, practical clothing, pants with many pockets and a jacket with the Earth insignia. His calm demeanor as he walked to the center of the chamber seemed almost insulting given the crisis at hand. "You requested my presence?" Junho asked, as if he'd been called to a routine meeting rather than an emergency session. Taeho leaned forward in his seat. "Explain these incursions. 17 worlds, Representative Junho. 17 sovereign council worlds infiltrated without permission. This is an act of war." Junho's eyebrows rose slightly. "War? No, council leader, you misunderstand. These are diplomatic missions, not invasions." Each team brought technological gifts and offers of assistance. "Assistance with what?" demanded a representative from the back. "Whatever you need," Junho replied, simply. "Environmental restoration, infrastructure improvements, medical advances. We're here to help." "In exchange for what?" asked Bayek, the draconian representative, his voice heavy with suspicion. Junho looked genuinely puzzled. "In exchange for nothing. We want to be good neighbors." The concept seemed to confuse many council members who turned to each other with questioning looks. In a galaxy where every transaction was carefully negotiated and resources jealously guarded, the idea of offering help without compensation was alien. "Show us Chorus 9, Taeho ordered, ignoring Junho for the moment. Hyun nodded and activated a data crystal. The hologram shifted to show real-time footage from the surface of Chorus 9. Humans in specialized suits worked alongside massive machines that extracted toxins from the soil and released something into the atmosphere. In the background, domed structures housed what appeared to be growing vegetation. "This is impossible," muttered a scientific advisor. "The atmospheric conversion alone should take years." "You're using conventional methods," Junho explained. "We developed a bacterial strain that feeds on the toxic elements and converts them to oxygen as a waste product. Combined with our atmospheric processors, we estimate Chorus 9 will be habitable without protective gear in approximately 3 weeks. 3 weeks? The scientific advisor's voice rose an octave. 3 weeks to undo centuries of toxic buildup? Junho shrugged. We could probably do it faster, but we're being cautious with the ecological balance. A new voice entered the conversation. Sumi, the diplomat who had previously spoken in favor of human integration. Why Chorus 9? She asked softly. It has no strategic value, no resources. It's been abandoned for centuries, because no one wanted it, Junho replied as if the answer was obvious. We didn't want to step on any toes by claiming a world someone else might want, and we like a challenge. You. Like a challenge, repeated Tejo slowly. Yes. Humans thrive on challenges. Chorus 9 was perfect. Hostile environment, toxic atmosphere, no infrastructure. It lets us test our terraforming techniques without interfering with established worlds. And the other 17 worlds? Asked Hyun. What challenge do they present? Oh, those aren't colonies, just diplomatic outposts. Small teams making contact, offering assistance. Tejo signaled, and the hologram shifted again, showing scenes from various council worlds. In each image, small groups of humans worked alongside, local species, helping repair infrastructure, treating the sick, teaching children. Why? Asked an elderly council member, genuine confusion in his voice. Why expend resources helping strangers who have nothing to offer in return? Junyo paused, considering the question carefully. That's just what humans do. We help because we can, and because eventually, that help comes back around. Not always from the same source, not always in the same way, but it does. The concept seemed to genuinely distress several council members. A philosophical representative from the Talon sector actually left the chamber, visibly shaken. This challenges the fundamental economic principles that have governed council space for millennia, muttered one economist to her neighbor. If resources are freely given without expectation of return, our entire exchange system becomes meaningless. Junho watched this reaction with interest. I hadn't considered that our approach might be so revolutionary. Tejo leaned back in his chair, studying the human carefully. You truly don't understand, do you? You've introduced a variable that our societal models cannot account for. Is that bad? It's unprecedented. The chamber fell silent as the council members contemplated the implications. Their careful political balance, maintained through elaborate systems of debt and obligation, faced a species that operated on fundamentally different principles. Your transportation technology, Hyun finally said, breaking the silence. How does it work? Junho smiled. We call it quantum displacement. Rather than moving through space, we temporarily shift ourselves slightly outside normal spacetime and reappear where we want to be. That's theoretically impossible, objected the science advisor. The energy requirements alone were solved by a teenager from a small island on Earth, Junho finished. She was trying to find a more efficient way to deliver medicine to remote villages. The space travel application was a bonus. Again, uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Tejo finally spoke, his voice thoughtful. I begin to understand why your planet was designated a death world, Representative Junho. Not because your world would kill you, but because the rest of the galaxy may not survive your helping us. Junho's eyes widened slightly. Then he laughed, a warm, genuine sound that echoed through the chamber. Don't worry, Council Leader. Humans are very good at adapting. We'll find a way to help that doesn't break your systems. That's what we do best. Find solutions to impossible problems. As the council members exchanged nervous glances, none could shake the feeling that the galaxy had just irrevocably changed. The warning sirens wailed across the Grand Council chamber, their pitch rising and falling in the ancient pattern that every council species recognized with primal dread. It was a sound not heard in over 300 years. Council Leader Tejo's face drained of color as he stared at the emergency transmission. His 4 hands trembled slightly before he clasped them together to hide his fear. The Void Swarm has returned, he announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent chamber. Military Advisor Hyun rushed to the central platform, her normally composed demeanor shattered by urgency. Multiple breaches detected in Sectors 7, 12, and 19. The swarm has bypassed our outer warning systems completely. The massive display screen showed real-time footage from the affected worlds. Dark, shifting masses of interconnected organisms poured from rifts in space, their hive ships resembling massive insects with countless appendages. Wherever they touched, destruction followed. Cities burned. Defense installations crumbled. How many ships can respond? Asked Tejo. Hyun's expression was grim. Our fleet is scattered across the galaxy. The nearest battle group is 3 days from the closest incursion point. 3 days? A representative from one of the affected worlds stood up, his voice breaking. My people will be consumed long before then. The chamber erupted into panicked. Voices as representatives demanded protection, offered useless suggestions, or simply voiced their terror. Silence, Taeho commanded. When the noise subsided, he turned back to Hyun. Begin evacuation protocols for Nexus, if the swarm has returned. In force, they will come here next. They always target the heart. As Hyun moved to comply, the doors to the chamber burst open. Captain Jiwoo strode in, followed by several other humans. Unlike the council members with their expressions of fear and defeat, the humans looked focused, determined. We received the alert, Jiwoo said without preamble. The void swarm, right? Nasty-looking bug things with a hive mind? Taeho nodded, too surprised by her casual tone to respond properly. We can help, she continued, approaching the central display. Our ships are already moving to intercept. Moving to... Hyun started, then checked her datapad in disbelief. That's impossible. The nearest battle is happening 16 light-years from here. Jiwoo gave a small smile. Remember our quantum displacement technology? Distance isn't really an issue for us. As if to confirm her words, the display suddenly showed new ships appearing near the battle zones. Human ships, smaller than the massive council vessels but more numerous. They moved differently too, not in the careful, coordinated patterns of council fleets but with seemingly random, unpredictable trajectories. What are they doing? Asked Sumi, watching in fascination as the human vessels darted around the much larger swarm ships. Fighting, Jiwoo said simply. Our way. The council. Chamber watched in silence as the battle unfolded. The humans used tactics unlike anything the council had ever seen. Small unmanned drones flew directly into swarm vessels, detonating upon impact. Other human ships transmitted signals on rapidly changing frequencies that seemed to confuse the hive mind, causing swarm ships to collide with each other or fire upon their own kind. Those maneuvers, Hyun whispered, watching a human ship dive directly toward a swarm vessel, weapons firing, only to pull away at the last possible moment. No pilot could survive those G-forces. Our pilots train for high-stress situations, Jiwoo explained. What looks like a suicide run to you is just Tuesday morning commute traffic for us. A council scientist who had been analyzing the battle data looked up in shock. They're using psychological warfare against a hive mind. That shouldn't be possible. The swarm has always been immune to such tactics, agreed Taeho. Their shared consciousness makes them resistant to fear or confusion. Jiwoo leaned against the display console, watching the battle with the calm assessment of a professional. We figured they communicate somehow, right? If they're a true hive mind, there must be signals passing between individual units. We just had to find the frequency and disrupt it. Basic electronic warfare, really. Basic. Hyun couldn't finish the sentence, her attention drawn back to the display where a particularly bold human maneuver had just destroyed 3 swarm ships at once. The static of a communication channel suddenly filled the chamber. A woman's voice, clear and confident, spoke over the sounds of battle. This is Fleet Commander Yuna of the Earth Defense Force to all Void Swarm units. You have attacked worlds under the protection of humanity. You threatened our new friends. That was your first mistake. The chamber fell silent, every being present hanging on her words. Your second mistake was assuming we fight to win. We don't. We fight so you lose. There was no bombast in her tone, no theatrical delivery. She spoke with the simple conviction of someone stating an obvious fact. You have one chance to retreat. Leave council space immediately and permanently. This is your only warning. For several long moments, nothing changed on the display. Though, Swarm continued its attack, seemingly undeterred by the human ultimatum. Then Jiwoo stepped forward, opening her own communication channel. Commander Yunha, this is Captain Jiwoo at Nexus. The Swarm doesn't appear to be taking your offer. You are authorized to proceed with Protocol Omega. Understood, Captain. Protocol Omega commencing now. The display suddenly showed hundreds of new signals appearing throughout the battle zones. More human ships, far more than anyone had realized, existed, How many vessels do you have? Asked Taeho, stunned by the numbers. Enough, Jiwoo replied simply. What followed was unlike any battle the Council had ever witnessed. The human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic at first glance, but revealed an underlying strategy so complex that even the hive mind couldn't predict it. They fired strange weapons that didn't destroy swarm ships, but somehow severed their connection to the collective consciousness, leaving them drifting and helpless. Most incredibly, some human vessels appeared to sacrifice themselves, flying directly into the largest swarm clusters in what looked like suicide runs, only for the pilots to materialize on other human ships moments later, saved by their quantum displacement technology. You rescue your pilots mid-battle? Asked Hyun, unable to hide her amazement. Of course, Jiwoo said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. We don't waste lives if we can help it. Within 2 hours, the impossible happened. The Void Swarm began to retreat. Not a strategic withdrawal to regroup, but a genuine retreat, back through the spatial rifts they had emerged from, fleeing from human ships that pursued them to the very edge of Council space. The Council chamber erupted in cheers and expressions of relief. Species that had been political enemies for centuries embraced in the joy of unexpected salvation. Through it all, Jiwoo and her fellow humans stood quietly, watching the celebration with small smiles. Taeho approached them, his formal demeanor set aside for once. In 300 years, no force has ever driven the Void Swarm to retreat, yet you accomplished it in hours. How is this possible? Jiwoo looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. The swarm is used to enemies who fight defensively, who try to minimize their own losses while inflicting damage. We fight differently. We commit fully. We take risks your cultures would consider insane. Because you value your own lives less? Asked Sumi, trying to understand. No, Jiwoo replied firmly. Because we value freedom more. Freedom is worth risking everything for, not just our own freedom, but the freedom of others too. As the council members absorbed this statement, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. A species they had dismissed as primitives from a death world had just saved the entire council from its most ancient and feared enemy. I believe, Taeho said slowly, that we have much to learn from you humans. Jiwoo smiled. And we from you. That's kind of the point of friendship, isn't it? Sunlight streamed through the newly installed crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber, casting rainbow patterns across walls that had been redesigned with artwork representing every member species. Gone were the tiered platforms that had once separated council members by rank and influence. In their place stood a massive circular table of polished wood, actual wood from earth forests, a gift that many council members had initially found strange but now touched with something like reverence. Today marked the formal induction of humanity into the Galactic Council, 3 months after their defense against the Void Swarm had changed everything. The chamber was filled beyond capacity, with representatives from all 300 council worlds present to witness the historic occasion. Director Jiho stood at the entrance, adjusting the collar of her formal uniform. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by other species, the human diplomatic corps had opted for simple, elegant designs, navy blue with silver trim and a single emblem representing Earth. Nervous? Asked Captain Jiwoo, appearing beside. Her Jiho smiled. A little. It's not every day you help reshape the political structure of an entire galaxy. You've done the hard part already, Jiwoo reminded her. Getting them to agree to the changes was the real challenge. Indeed, the past 3 months had seen intense debate within the council. Some members had opposed granting humans full membership, arguing that Earth's technology and aggressive innovation posed too great a risk. Others had lobbied for humanity to receive special status above other species. The humans had rejected both positions. Equal seats at a round table, Jiho had insisted in countless negotiations. No species above or below another, that's our only condition. To everyone's surprise, Council Leader Taeho had become their strongest advocate, arguing passionately for the human vision of equality. Now, as the ceremony was about to begin, he approached the two women with a warm smile, an expression he had adopted from human custom. Director Jiho, Captain Jiwoo, he greeted them, his four hands performing the complex gesture of highest respect. Today marks the beginning of a new era for us all. Let's hope it's a good one, Jiho replied, returning the gesture as best she could with only two hands. The ceremonial chimes sounded, calling all present to take their places. Jiho and Jiwoo moved to the two seats reserved for Earth, while Tai-ho took his position, no longer at the head of the assembly but simply as one member among equals. Representatives of the galaxy, Tai-ho began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. We gather today to welcome our newest members and to embrace the changes they have inspired. He gestured to the humans, and all eyes turned toward them. 3 months ago, we believed humans were primitive beings from a death world who had somehow stumbled upon advanced technology. Today, we recognize them as equals whose unique perspective has already strengthened our council immeasurably. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The memory of the Void Swarm's retreat was still fresh in every mind. Tai-ho continued. Director Jiho will now present the first initiative under our new cooperative framework. Jiho rose and moved to the center of the circle. The holographic display activated, showing images of various pre-spaceflight civilizations across the galaxy. For millennia, she began, the Council's policy toward developing species has been one of quarantine and observation. Worlds like Earth were isolated, studied from afar, and judged based on environmental factors rather than potential. The images shifted to show planets surrounded by barrier technology similar to what had once contained Earth. Today, we propose the Galactic Nurture Initiative. Instead of isolation, we will offer subtle guidance to promising civilizations. Instead of judgment based on their planets, we will evaluate their creativity, their resilience, and their values. The proposal was detailed but revolutionary. Carefully managed technological assistance, discreet cultural exchange, and protection from exploitative interests, all designed to help young civilizations join the galactic community on their own terms. As Jiho spoke, she noticed many council members leaning forward with interest. The same beings who had once argued for maintaining Earth's quarantine now seemed captivated by the possibility of welcoming new perspectives. We believe, Jiho concluded, that diversity is not just to be tolerated but celebrated. Each species brings unique strengths to our collective. By nurturing rather than isolating developing civilizations, we strengthen the galaxy as a whole. When she finished, the chamber was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause, or the various species equivalents, from the clicking of appendages to the harmonic humming of crystalline beings. Tai-ho rose again. We will vote on the Nurture Initiative at tomorrow's session. For now, let us complete the induction of Earth as a full council member. The formal ceremony proceeded with ancient rituals adapted to accommodate human physiology. Oaths were sworn, agreements signed, and symbolic gifts exchanged. By the time it concluded, Earth was officially the 301st member of the Galactic Council. As the formal session ended and the gathering transitioned to a celebration, Tai-ho approached. Jiho with a more private request. Would you be willing to accompany me on a short journey? There is something I would like you to see. Intrigued, Jiho agreed. They boarded a small transport vessel that took them to a different section of the massive Nexus station. When they disembarked, Jiho was surprised to find herself in what appeared to be a school or nursery. Small beings of various species played together in a bright, cheerful space designed to accommodate different physiologies and needs. This is the Council Future Center, Tai-ho explained. Children of diplomatic families and station residents learn together here. But look, he pointed to a corner where several small aliens gathered around a human child, who was showing them how to build something with colored blocks. Nearby, a young Veloxian was teaching a human child the beginning movements of their species' traditional dance. 3 months ago, these children were segregated by species, Tai-ho said quietly. Now look at them. As they watched, a teacher gathered the children for a lesson. Jiho was surprised to recognize the teacher as Sumi, the council representative who had first spoken in favor of human integration. Sumi requested a temporary reassignment, Taeho explained, seeing Jiho's surprise. She said the future of the galaxy would be shaped in classrooms, not council chambers. The children settled into a circle, a miniature version of the new council table, and listened attentively as Sumi began a story about cooperation between different species. I opposed your presence initially, Taeho admitted to Jiho as they watched. I believed that after thousands of years the council had perfected its approach to governance. I saw your methods as chaotic. Your boldness as dangerous. Jiho waited, silently sensing there was more. I was wrong, Taeho continued. We had become so concerned with maintaining order that we had forgotten to grow. We thought silence was power, the ability to make decisions without debate, to maintain traditions without question. He gestured toward the children, who were now working together to act out the story Sumi had told. Humans taught us that true strength lies in diverse voices uniting for a common purpose, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. As they turned to leave, Jiho noticed something unexpected. A small human Veloxian child, with features clearly from both species. The child caught her surprised look and smiled brightly before returning to play. Yes, Taeho said, noting her reaction. The first of many, we believe. Life finds ways to adapt and combine that we never imagined possible, much like your approach to the galaxy. As they returned to the celebration, Jiho felt a profound sense of purpose. Humanity had crashed into the galactic community with all their chaotic energy and unconventional thinking, and the ripples of that arrival would continue for generations. The universe, it seemed, would never be quite the same again. And that, Jiho thought with satisfaction, was exactly as it should be.